Hey Kenton, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you as I am very interested in the software testing domain. And with someone like you having 20 years of domain expertise, I'm pretty sure I'm going to learn a lot.
Session, it's very nice to see you in person. We worked together for maybe a year or two, and I hope I can teach you stuff. We'll have to see.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. We would love to start how on how did you start your career? Like how did you get into the testing industry, and what challenges did you face when you started your career?
Well, I think I came into the testing industry through what I see as kind of a common pathway. My degree was in liberal arts, and my major was comparative literature. So I just accidentally kind of got into QA, and then I fell in love with it and have been there ever since. The first company I worked for was started by the guy who invented the pop under ad. If you remember that, it's an old one. Since then, the technology has changed a lot, obviously. Um, I would say now my area of expertise, we do a lot of video, interactive ads, non-IAB standard ads, which the IAB is the Internet Advertising Board, and they have a bunch of standards, one of which is like 3 different sizes for ads. A lot of our ads don't have those sizes, so we need close relationships with publishers to let them give us the slots on the pages. And we also have a lot of like dynamic ads that are connected to different retailer APIs, geo-targeting, retailer stock and sales, stuff like that.
Yeah, very impressive. And I can imagine, ad testing is very dynamic. There are a lot of moving pieces. There is a exchange, there is a supply side, there's a demand side, and it must be very hard to test everything because a lot of components are there and you don't control all the components.
That's correct.
So, what is the most challenging part of software testing or your job?
I think the closer to sales in the process you are, the worse, the more challenging it gets.
Mhm.
My team supports several different development teams. The ones where there's a guy going out and saying, we can do this. And then they sell a campaign and then they bring it to the devs and say, we need this week. So I really dislike this, but it's something we have to do because we have to make money, but without requirements, and you have to do it really quickly. Just ad hoc testing is pretty challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine. And what excites you most about your job?
This kind of relates to my answer to the most challenging part. I love like a nice big feature with well-documented requirements and a clear timeline. It's just the best.
Yeah,
Um,
got it.
I also
Yeah,
like tracking down bugs. I remember a pretty big one that I could recount if you'd like to hear it.
yeah, of course.
Okay, so our ads are displayed on a number of different sites, and each site has its own branding. So one of our products has a little ad unit that people click, and it drives them to a page on the site that looks like an article, but it's actually just entirely sponsored content. So
Mm,
one day, our ad operations guy messages me and says, it looks like nobody's looking at this sponsored content, even though a lot of people are clicking on the ads that drive to it. This took me a long time to research, but it ended up being that we were tracking users. This is back when we had cookies, we would add a numerical segment to their tracking information for every site or property they visited. And the impressions were failing because we were using GET requests for the impression pixels.
I
And
see.
there's a limit of 2048 characters on
Yes,
GET requests.
yes.
So after a week of pulling out my hair, we found this and we changed it to post and everything was fixed.
Oh man. Yeah, it was very tricky. And I guess like debugging ads or JavaScript pixels can be very tricky across browsers as well. So you must be getting some browser specific issues as well, like Safari specific or Firefox specific. I'm not sure, but just a guess.
That's very true. The worst one to test is anything in the iPhone ecosystem. For instance, a while we were running ads within Apple News, and they don't let you see the network traffic. Even if you have a partnership with them, it's very hard to test that. It's
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
true definition of black box testing.
yeah, I can imagine. Well, thank you, Kenton. Now I would like to switch gears. Some questions in the software testing as industry. So how do you see software testing industry going? Is it like shrinking or is it expanding? Are more people joining software testing or are people leaving software testing industry?
That's a very good question. I think as long as we have software, there will always be a need for testing. And as long as we have the internet, there's always going to be ads. So, at least for me, I feel like our industry can only expand.
Yeah, very interesting. Anecdotally, I have spoken to a couple of people in my network, and what I found was that uh, they have been itching to move into some other role after certain years. One of them was trying to move into a product management role. One of them was trying to move to a development role. So, does this mean that there is a stagnation in the software testing domain after certain years, or like a lack of a career ladder for them?
That makes a lot of sense to me. As for compensation, I can see after working with in software for a while, desire to move to devs because they can generally expect higher compensation. And for project management, like a third of my job in any cases already overlaps with project management.
Mhm.
I've been lucky in my career because the teams that we support are always kind of on the cutting edge and making new products. So we always have new interesting things to test, and it just is interesting keeping up with the cutting edge. And but yeah, I completely get that impulse. And if I were in a different company, I would likely try to move to be a dev.
Okay, that makes sense. And is this somehow related to companies spending on quality? For example, there is a dedicated budget on engineering, which is solely responsible for building new features and maintaining the product. Right? So there is a dedicated budget towards that. There is a dedicated budget towards the tools that developers can use and buy. Right? So do you see that like companies spend enough on software testing? I mean, be it in terms of people, or be it in terms of resources for them, or be it in terms of upskilling them. And as the testing industry is moving, and a lot of AI products are coming along as well, do you see that as a problem that companies not investing enough in quality as general?
Absolutely. I think they hire developers and they're like, we hired this guy, he passed all the interviews, he should be making perfect code. So why do we even need someone to test it? But it nobody's perfect. Any code you make will break in some way, but of course they don't want to hear it. I completely agree. We don't get nearly enough budget, and we're always going to be necessary.
Got it. And since we mentioned about dev, I've seen, especially on platforms like Reddit, there is a continuous dev versus QA banter. How do you see this? Like, do they work against each other or with each other? Like, how important is the relationship between developer and QA?
Yeah, I can easily see like the QA dev relationship could be adversarial. I'm always kind of deliberate about putting effort into this because I mean, how would you feel if you worked for like really hard on something for a long time and the first feedback you get is like, this is wrong, this is broken, fix this? I really try to approach it with like, I'm working with you instead of against you. I like frequent communication, and I try to get my team involved in all like the planning meetings and stuff so they can see us as being part of the team working with them.
Mm-hmm.
I recently gave a talk to some of the devs teams we support, and I said, no matter how good an engineer you are, and all of you are very good engineers, there are going to be bugs. We're here to help you find them and make the best product we can.
Yeah, and that's very inspiring. Yeah. Do you feel like a detective when so you find bugs? Detectives solve crime.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and especially in my career, like I've been a developer, so I've been only the one side of the table, and I've got a lot of bugs which I were not able to reproduce. So, do you also see this happening? Like when you report bugs, developers just put one line, I can't reproduce this, and they move on to the next thing, right? Because developers are also busy building their own stuff, and solving bugs is like a context switch for them. So, do you see this happening? And any thoughts on how do we improve this?
I definitely see this happening, especially, yeah, as you said, like if a developer is really focused on something, it is a big context switch. The first way that I address this with my teams, I just have a little quote on my wall. It says, if it's not reproducible, it's not a bug. Because we don't log things until we can reproduce it, unless it's like a big, huge crisis.
Yeah,
And I always have them include as much info as possible, like clear steps to reproduce a video, a HAR file of the network traffic. Back in like the office days, if it was really bad, I would just like bring my laptop over. But that is a big problem. The best that I've thought of is just providing as much clear and comprehensive evidence and context as you can.
okay, that makes sense. And how do you manage the test cases? Like when you have to test new features, you must be building a list of test cases. Like traditionally, people have been using Sheets, but are there better softwares now, or maybe just Jira is enough?
We also use Google Sheets. We used to use TestLink, which I really liked. But, for some reason, we had to abandon it, and now it's just, yeah, Google Sheets.
Sheets is the best answer to all questions.
It's very
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Like, speaking of Sheets, I want to also ask a couple of questions around tools and resources. Uh, like, what are some good tools that you use as a software tester?
Well, I've had to say with some of our more like bleeding edge products, a lot of them were dealing with new API partnerships, and we have different test environments that are sometimes hard to set up. So, top number one tool would have to be Requestly for me and my team. We use it to view non-production code on a production environment, which in QA you always want to be as close to the production environment as possible when testing. And then we just also use DevTools a lot because we solely test web applications. So viewing network
Got it.
traffic and being able to affect network traffic are the two most important things.
Got it. And what are some resources to become a good software tester?
Kind of a difficult question for me because I mostly just learned by interacting with people, but I do have this book called Soft Skills
Yeah,
by John Sonmez. I found it's not directly about testing, but reading that really gave me insight into the developer's view and just how to be a good office mate and how to work with anyone in software development space.
yeah, makes sense. I think everyone should read this book. I have myself read this book,
It's
Soft
a great
Skills.
book.
Yeah, and especially engineers should definitely read this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, because engineers also communicate via code.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So uh, next couple of questions are around hiring. I haven't personally hired any software tester. I've hired software engineers, so I don't know this process. How do you hire a good software tester?
Well, first I need to say you should be hiring software testers.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
when I'm hiring, I look for someone that is, I guess, curious would be a good word. Doesn't
Mhm.
take things for granted, like isn't certain about what they perceive. They don't have complete certainty. Like they can critically think and don't just jump to conclusions. I think reproducing a bug is kind of like similar to the scientific process. Like you come up with a hypothesis, like this bug is maybe it's acting this way because of this, and then you want to kind of try to prove or disprove it. by controlling as many variables as you can, changing one thing at a time and seeing what changes, and always look for the negative hypothesis. If my hypothesis about this bug is correct, what should I not be seeing? I like to ask questions and stuff that looks for that kind of critical thinking and willingness to not just have one hypothesis and be like, I'm right, that's it, I've decided.
Yeah, makes sense. In fact, your number first point could be attributed to the book Soft Skills.
Exactly.
Yeah. What are a couple of good interview questions for a software tester?
Well, as before, I like to kind of get a view into how they think.
Yeah.
So common ones is I'll ask them to write a test suite for something simple like a toaster, and just like see how they would go about doing that. If they have experience, I'd ask them what part of the product life cycle they like and what's fulfilling. Hopefully they like investigating and documenting. And I like to ask them, in your role as QA, like, what are you accountable for? And the answer I'm looking for is like the complete perfect function of the product or something like that. Trying to weed out like it's not my job, or that wasn't in the testing description or specs, so I'll just ignore it. And then, I'd like to also ask about like overcoming a challenge. How do you learn, and how do you like determine how severe a bug is? Just different ways to get like how much responsibility they take, if they understand what makes something serious and what's important to the product.
Yeah, thank you, Kenton. I think ownership is something that everyone evaluates respect to the role, like how much ownership they take and how do they think about the product, be it engineering, be it product manager. And it's very important to think holistically, take the product as my own product, right? Like only then you can deliver like very good quality, right? Once you are, very passionate about that, this is my product and I don't want any bugs or any, corner cases to be left out. And if you're also passionate about your customers, if a customer is having a pain, then if you're having the same pain, then probably you will not let any bug go into the production, right? So I think customer
Precisely.
empathy is one of the things that I also evaluate irrespective of the role. But I think you added like fantastic points.
This is a bit counter to respecting the customer, which I agree, but often when you're doing exploratory testing, we make many test cases assuming that the customer is just an idiot, because that really helps with finding anything that could go wrong. But we should still respect the customer a bunch. But when making test cases, it's good to underestimate them.
Yeah, for sure. And what are some red flags in a software testing interview?
Someone that likes to be right, like it seems like they would enjoy pointing out errors. Like that they'll be bad for the devs. Not adaptable, takes things personally. Like this is my opinion. If you disprove it, it affects me. Not here's an opinion. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, very good points. And now I would like to conclude with 4 to 5 rapid questions.
Okay,
cool. So, which is your favorite end-to-end testing framework, Playwright or Selenium?
Having used both, Playwright.
We are right now using Playwright to automate our end-to-end testing within Requestly. So recently we did Garage Week, where one of our engineers implemented end-to-end rule creation and testing using Playwright.
Cool.
Yeah. And what do you enjoy more, testing UI or testing APIs?
I have a cheat answer to this one.
Sure.
Because many of our APIs are hooked up directly to display ads. So I prefer to test the APIs by making sure that the UI segments that rely on APIs behave correctly. And then if there's something going wrong, then I like to look into the APIs. since every API we use has an output, I like to just check the outputs and then only investigate.
Okay. So I take testing UI as your answer.
Yep. Actually, yeah, I didn't need to say all that. It's just testing UI.
Okay. What's your favorite tech community? Reddit or Hacker News?
It's also a tough one, but I'll go with Hacker News.
Okay. Do you spend time on Hacker News?
Every Monday I like to drink coffee and just read what's going on.
Yeah. People on Hacker News are very passionate, and there's a lot of quality content. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And when you are tired, what do you like to have? A beer or coffee?
When I'm tired,
Yes.
coffee.
So the coffee person. You take coffee in the morning and you take coffee in the evening?
I take coffee in the morning and beer in the evening.
Okay. And my last question. Requestly or Charles proxy?
Not even close. Sachin, I gotta say, hands down, it's Requestly. I've used Charles before, but now I use Requestly, and that's what I'll use in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kenton, for your time today. And I have really learned a lot.
Thanks, Sachin. It was great to talk to you.